Hi everyone, Leah here from EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another helpful beading video for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to go check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and that notification bell and you'll always know when we're posting new content. So today what I have for you is a fun Valentine's Day inspired Lariat necklace. And if you're not familiar with what a Lariat necklace is, it's a necklace that has no clasp. So these are super fun. They're really versatile with how you can wear them. You can basically wear a Lariat necklace any way that you would wear a scarf. And so like a scarf, the longer the scarf or the longer the Lariat necklace, the more options you have for wearing it. In this particular case, this is going to be a pretty simple lariat, 24 inches long, and you'll be able to simply tie it in the front of your neck. If it was longer, you can do extra wraparounds and some other fun things, but we're keeping this one simple. So what I have here for components, and as you can see, I've already wrapped one of my hearts on because I couldn't wait. I am using matte rose gold Rolo chain, and I think the fact that it's matte adds a lovely modern look to it. And of course, who doesn't love rose gold? You can see I have one of my hearts, like I said, already on there. And then the other components I have are a smaller Swarovski crystal pendant heart. These are both in Siam. And then I have some Swarovski crystal round beads, and these are in light Siam. And then as far as the other stuff, I am also using some wire. This wire is half hard round wire, and it is 14 karat gold filled. And we carry different gauges of both 14 karat gold filled and sterling silver wire on our website, EurekaCrystalBeads.com. And then for tools, I have the three sort of basic wire working tools that should be in every jewelry maker's arsenal, starting off with our round nose pliers, which are sort of like two ice cream cones. There's no flat edge in there at all. And you know you have a decent pair when you can look at it, and when it's closed, there's no gap running in between the two jaws. That means that you'll be able to grab these finer gauged wires, like the 26 gauge wire I'm using in this video. The next pair of pliers are my chain nose pliers. Now these are flat inside and they're smooth, and they taper to a point when you look at them closed. That's what distinguishes them from flat nose pliers. These are chain nose pliers. And then lastly, I have my wire side cutters. Pretty standard. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to show you how I wrapped this heart on by wrapping on the heart on the other side. And I'm sure you noticed that they are two different sizes. I actually really like doing asymmetry on lariats because most oftentimes those two ends are never going to sit the exact same length on you when you're wearing them. So I think to further enhance it with more asymmetry is just a really beautiful thing to do. So I have two different sizes of hearts that will dangle, one on each side. So to get started with the hardest part, which is getting that heart on there, I'm going to be taking my wire and I'm going to thread it through the hole that's running front to back on that pendant. And I'm going to have about 1.25 inches or so hanging out on the other side. And I'm going to tightly crisscross them above the heart. Nice and close, just like that. Now, as you can see, they're both kind of going out in either direction here. What I want to do now is use my chain nose pliers and carefully grab the long piece right down at that intersection, and I want this long piece to go straight up away from the heart while this piece will stay going off to the side. So I'm going to grab that longer wire right down at that intersection, right where they form an X, and I'm going to bend straight up while supporting the rest of that wire with my fingers on either side. Now I'm going to turn it so my little tail is pointing away from me. This is simply how I find it most helpful to hold my wire. And I'm going to use my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to grab the two wires right where they overlap. And it might be a little tricky to get your pliers in there, but there we go. Right where they overlap. And I'm going to start to wrap the short piece around the long piece. And what I want to do is make sure I have a nice 90-degree angle here. That 90-degree angle is what's going to make my wraps nice and clean. And I'm going to do about 3 wraps and go nice and slow. Really watch what you're doing. You want to see each of those 3 wraps form one after the other, nicely sitting next to each other like good little neighbors. Okay, there we go. And it's important to wrap slow and really watch as you go, because if you start to see a gap appear or the wrap you're working on starts to overlap a previous wrap, you can stop before you've gone too far and then it's harder to fix. So I have 3 little wraps there. Now I'm going to take my cutter and I'm going to cut this tail of wire off as close as I can get it. Now, no matter how close you get it, you're usually still left with a little tiny bit of wire that's left there that can stick out and it can scratch you or catch on clothing. You can see it right there. It's just really difficult to get super duper close, but that's fine because we can use our chain nose pliers and we can now tuck in that little bit of wire so it's not sticking out anymore, just like that. And what's nice is that if this wrap didn't look absolutely perfect for you, that's okay, because we're actually going to be covering over it. So don't fret if it doesn't look as absolutely perfect as you want it to. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that wrap lightly from the outside, and I'm going to bend that wire straight out from the top of it. So now my long piece of wire here is coming out from a 90-degree angle from the top of that wrap. Because now it's time to make a loop. So we're going to go to our round nose pliers because we're preparing to make a round shape. I'm going to grab that wire right close to where that wrap is. Now, as far as where you hold it on your pliers, whether it's down towards the tip or it's further into the jaws, that just determines how big your loop is going to be. We don't need a loop that's enormous, so we're going to just grab about here. Just about there. I'm going to bring my wire up and around so it starts to wrap around the top jaw of the pliers and it starts to form my loop. But before I keep going, I need to shift my pliers a little bit now, because if I keep going with my wire here, my wire is going to get wrapped around the bottom jaw of the pliers and it's going to create an ugly bump. So I'm just going to shift my pliers forward a little bit. And now I can keep going. And then if you have to, you can go ahead and roll this loop over so it sits nice and straight, and then you're good. Now, we're going to go back to our chain nose pliers because we're going to now wrap this loop shut. So a couple of things. First of all, if you're not sure what pair of pliers to use, just remember, we've created our round shape. We're done with our round pliers. And then the other thing to remember is to attach this loop to the piece of chain before you wrap it shut, because this is take number 3 of this video because I keep forgetting. So don't make the same mistake that I keep making, folks. So we're going to slide this chain right onto that piece of wire. Let me move this. I think it's affecting my focus. There we go. Right onto that chain, and you're going to slide it down into that loop like a key onto a key ring. And it'll slide right down in there. Now we can go ahead and wrap that loop shut. So we're going to grab that loop from the outside and sandwich it flat in between the jaws of our chain nose pliers. And you're going to take this wire and you're going to wrap right over the existing wrap that you made earlier. Just nice and slowly, one wrap after another, and on top of the wraps below it. So our wrap ends up looking a little fatter, but that's okay. I think that still looks totally fine as long as it's nice and neat and clean. So this may take a little bit of practice for you, but that's okay. Practice makes perfect. Now we are going to trim off this wire as close as we can get it. And again, just like before, we might have that little bit of wire that stays sticking out. You can see it right there. That's all right. We can go ahead and tuck this in with our chain nose pliers. So that is how you want to handle both sides of the lariat. And if you really are bothered by the asymmetry, as some people are, you can certainly make these both the same size. That's totally fine. This is also a great technique for making these heart pendants into earrings. You would do the same exact thing, and then you would just attach that loop onto an ear wire. You have a beautiful pair of earrings made with any pendant shape. In this case, though, I think the hearts are, of course, very appropriate. All right, now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to use these Swarovski crystal beads and we're going to cut into the chain and we're going to wire them in. Now this is of course going to add a lovely design element, but it's also going to give us the opportunity to make our lariat just a little bit longer because we're going to be adding them into the chain and not just dangling off of the chain. So this is also a nice little trick. If your necklace is just a little too short, you can always cut into it and wire wrap some lovely beads, whether they're matching beads or just beads that are neutral, like a plain gold bead or something, and you can get a little bit more length out of your project. So I'm going to be using the same piece of wire that I have been, and I'm going to start by cutting just a few links above where that heart is. And you're going to want to count your links because you're going to want to make sure that you either cut at the same spot on the other side, or perhaps you want to just wing it and continue that whole theme of asymmetry. So it's up to you. And you know, I think that's actually what I might do. I think that would be a lovely design plan. So I just cut that little link. Don't get too scared when you have to do it. So you can see we have our pendant is now separate from the rest of our chain, but worry not. So we're going to go to this wire here. We're going to use our chain nose pliers. We're going to make a little right angle bend. And if I go through these steps a little fast for you, don't worry. We'll link you below to my wire working video on doing this exact technique, which goes over it much more slowly. So in case this is a little bit too fast for you, definitely check out that video that we'll link below because it's going to have a lot more detail as far as each broken down granular step. So we're going to make our little loop right at the top. Like this. I just shift my pliers forward just like before. Okay, so I have my loop there, and now what I'm going to do is attach it to the end link of my chain. I could do either side. I could do the side with the heart on it. I could do the longer side here. It doesn't really matter. And just like before, when we were working with the heart right here, we're going to go ahead and wrap this shut. And because this is half hard wire, which is super important for this, it's a lot easier to get nice tight wraps. You can literally just push this with your finger and you'll get nice tight wraps. Dead soft wire, you have to really pull it and work it into place because it's just not ideal wire for this. Dead soft wire is great for bigger wire wrapped pieces that require large bits of flowy wire. But for nice tight little bits like this, nice half hard wire is perfect. So now we're going to cut that little tail off. Tuck in our little edge, which takes a little practice. It might want to spin on you a couple times. Here we go. So we've linked them back together, and I'm going to stick on a bead, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to grab the wire right above the bead. I'm going to make a bend, so that way where I was grabbing with the pliers creates a little bit of space, and where that space is going to get filled up with wraps, so that way the bead that can wiggle right now won't be able to wiggle anymore. I'm going to go ahead and grab with my pliers, bring my wire up and over, shift my pliers forward, bring my wire underneath the rest of the way, roll it over to center it if I have to, bring that tail back down. Because again, you want to see what looks like essentially a lollipop on top of a lollipop stick, nice and centered. And then we can go and attach the longer piece in. Again, just stick it through that end link of chain, slide it into the loop like a key onto a key ring. And then we can wrap it shut. Grab it with your chain nose pliers. And again, if you're not sure, we've made our round shape. We're done with our round pliers. And we're going to do the wraps to get down to the bead. So now that we have that wrap finished, we can take our chain nose pliers, we can take our side cutters, cut that wire off as close as we can get it, and tuck in that little edge that's left behind. Just like that, and we've linked our chain back together. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and do that a few more times, adding in the rest of my beads, and I will see you back here in a minute with the finished project. Okay, so I have my finished lariat here, and as you can see, it lays out beautifully as a lovely asymmetrical design, which I personally am a big fan of. If you struggle with asymmetry, that's no big deal. You can certainly just use hearts of the same size and line up your beads as you plug them into the chain, or if you want to have a nice hybrid, still use the two different size hearts, but then have the beads line up, and you can certainly get away with many options here. You can certainly wire in as many beads as you like. Again, especially a great little trick up your sleeve if you find that your necklace is a little short, just wire in some more beads. You can get some more length out of your project. But I kind of wanted to keep this sort of sweet and simple. And that is the finished project. So again, I have my two different sized heart pendants. I had just a few 6mm Swarovski round crystals and a couple of 4mm Swarovski round crystals. And we're gonna link you below to everything that I used in this video in case you'd like to take a look. And yeah, that basically wraps it up, folks. Thanks for watching. Head on over to EurekaCrystalBeads.com for everything that I used here below if you'd like. And we will see you next time. Happy Valentine's Day.